Hi, I'm Kimberly Parsons, the owner of Hearth and Gnome, and I wanted to welcome you to my video today about 3 common pitfalls about teaching music and how to avoid them. I want to welcome you to my site as well and tell you a little bit about myself. I have a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Music degree, both from Baylor University in Waco, Texas. I'm a fully certified music educator with classroom and studio experience, and I also sing professionally and do church music outside of my home. So I have quite a wild and varied experience in music, both in performing and in teaching it to all age levels and all ability levels. And I'm excited at Hearth and Gnome to share some of those materials that I use and am using with you, whether you're a homeschool parent or a small group leader, or perhaps you are a teacher who finds yourself in the position of needing to teach music and you need some supports in doing that. So that's what I aim to do at Hearth and Gnome, is to provide opportunities for you to have music and story and imagination to share with all of the children in your life. I'm also a homeschooling mom, and I happen to use the Waldorf method. I have 2 children, and after spending some time in the classroom, we felt like it was the best fit for us, for me to stay home and homeschool them. Waldorf is different, and if you're not a Waldorf homeschooler, welcome to this video, and I'm sure that there will be things here that you can use in your music education practice or in your homeschool as well. But I'm also a work-at-home mom. Hearth and Gnome is one of the things that I do, and then the other musical activities that I'm involved in. So I'm very aware of what it's like to be a classroom teacher, to be a homeschooling parent, to be a parent that also works outside the home or inside the home. And I'm very sympathetic to all of the demands that are made on us as parents and as educators. And so today in our video, while we're talking about these pitfalls, I want to help you avoid them. And I want to help you, perhaps if you've fallen down into one of them, to pull yourself back out. It is planning season for a lot of homeschoolers. And so I am a member of a number of different boards and different discussion groups. And so this video came from some of the things that I've been just listening and just observing a lot of the questions that I get behind the scenes via private messages and the like, that I wanted to share, because oftentimes one of the hardest things, at least for me, about being a homeschool mother is sometimes feeling like we are isolated, like we're the only one that has that struggle or that question, and you're not. We're not. And so one of my goals today is to help you to recognize some of those things that might be making things more difficult for you, and help you avoid them or help you rise up above them. I want you to experience ease and joy. I want you to experience confidence and connection, especially as you're bringing music to your children. And I think once we've gone through these things I want to talk about today, perhaps you'll be able to experience those at a deeper level. So let's just jump right in. One of the main pitfalls that I observe in my work, both with traditional families that are not coming from a Waldorf perspective and those that are, the first pitfall is focusing on an instrument. In Waldorf circles, that instrument is the pentatonic flute or the diatonic flute or recorder. In traditional families, it's often a stringed instrument or the piano, and that's really a pitfall. Let me tell you why. This is not just my opinion. This is an opinion that was shared by many others. If you're a Waldorf home educator, it was Rudolf Steiner's desire that children's music education would begin with singing. That singing is the foundation, and that then once they had learned a number of songs for singing, that they would then also learn to play a blown instrument. And that is why so many Waldorf homeschoolers are concerned about learning to play the pentatonic flute or diatonic flute or recorder, but that the foundation of all musical learning would be singing. Now, if you're a traditional homeschooler, I want to encourage you too that many of the methods that are used in the traditional homeschool paradigm, the Kodály method, based on the work of Zoltán Kodály, who was a Hungarian composer, music ethnologist, a music educator, and a musician himself, and as well as the work of Carl Orff. Both of those methods are also based on a foundation of singing. Now, Kodai may be the one that you're more familiar with. It uses the, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, of those syllables. Orff is the one that you will see in schools where they're playing the xylophone and metallophone and other instruments like that. But the Kodai and Orff practitioners that I know still base their practice, and especially the Kodai, not still, but they base their practice on singing, that the basis of all that they do is singing, because when we're trying to develop true musicianship is more than being able to look at spots on a page and recreate that on an instrument. True musicianship is when you're able to faithfully recreate, to be able to improvise and create your own works, and it's that feeling, it's that special spark that you get when you're listening to someone who's playing not just in a way that is technically correct, but in a way that touches your soul. And part of that is the ability, as one of my favorite professors used to talk about, that you would have seeing ears and hearing eyes. And though I'm traditionally trained, that was a hard skill for me to develop. And what she meant by that was the ability to look at the printed page and notation, and without having to go to the piano or your instrument, be able to know what it sounds like just by looking. And likewise, to be able to hear a piece of music being played or sung and being able to conceptualize what that would look like on the printed page. And those are important skills that we want to give our children a great foundation to be able to go forward in their musicianship. And those are things that begin with singing. Now, the other reason that singing is the foundation is that singing is our natural instrument. That's who we are. That's something that we are truly making out of ourselves. And so singing is just a way for your child to just connect more completely with who they are and with all of the marvelous things that they can do. So focusing on the instrument can really take away from that full experience of their own musicianship. And I'm sorry, my cat is singing in the background. We're just going to have to power through, but we want to make sure that they're singing and getting lots of experience doing that. The other reason the singing you'll want to do is if you are a Waldorf educator, or you are going to at some point teach your child an instrument, any instrument, being able to sing makes that learning that much easier, because we can play, we can read, anything that we can sing. And so if we start with that singing, we're giving them a great foundation to eventually transfer that knowledge and that ability to an instrument. And it's just a great pedagogical path. It's just a great way to bring them along in their learning. If you are not familiar with the Music Unfolds curriculum that I wrote with Melissa Nilsson at Waldorf Essentials, that's why we focus so much on the singing. And yes, there are facets of it of choosing songs to play on the instrument, and that is part of the curriculum. It is a Waldorf true curriculum, but the main focus needs to be on the singing. So if you find yourself really focusing on that instrument, I would encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself how the singing is going. And if the instrument part is not going well, then I would encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself if you've really spent time with the singing. The more fluent and fluid your child is able to sing any song which you're wanting them to play on an instrument, the more easy that learning will be. So I'll address again this particular focus on the instrument, where I think that might in part be coming from later in this video. But that first pitfall is really just pushing through and pushing on with the instrument instead of taking the time to really focus on singing, which is the foundation, which is the essence and the most essential piece of any good music education. The second pitfall I want to talk about is focusing on notation. Now, this was a hard one for me when I first stepped into the classroom many years ago. I wanted my junior high students to be reading music from the page. And of course, we want students to be able to read music from the page. But it took me a while to grasp that before they could read music from the page, they had to be able to recreate what they were hearing and what I was modeling for them to do, and that the reading of the music would follow the doing of the music. Now, if you're a Waldorf educator, that concept is probably not unfamiliar to you, because that's how we teach reading. That these are words and sounds with which they're already familiar, and then we give the symbol to represent that thing that they already know. And in Music Unfolds and in any great music curriculum, you're going to find where there's really an emphasis on this is what you have been doing, and now we will give that thing you have already been doing a name and a symbol. That is the basis for the Kodai method, especially, that is intertwined in Music Unfolds. And it's a Steiner thing. In his discussions with teachers about how to teach music, he wanted them to learn those little songs tunefully and well, and then for the teacher to draw from those things opportunities to teach and name the musical elements and skills. In Waldorf education, we do not begin to teach reading of notation until around grade 3, and so if you are doing notation earlier than that, you are perhaps missing out on some of those skill building opportunities for developing, again, those seeing ears and hearing eyes. So I see a lot of people just jumping right into notation, and it's just a paradigm shift. A lot of us who do read music or took music lessons, that's what we started with. How many of us remember our first piano lesson, perhaps? And on the first page, I remember there was a quarter note, and it said, "This is a quarter note. It gets one beat." And then there was a line of them, and it said, "This is a C." So you played ding, 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 ding. 16 of them across the page, and you got your foil star, and you went on. And then there was the half note, and then there was a whole note, and so that's where we started. That's what we know, and we're only, all of us, able to do what we know. So if you are coming to this kind of music education, there's no shame in you've been doing what you know, but I would like to encourage you that instead of focusing on that notation, to first focus on allowing your child to learn things by rote, R-O-T-E, by rote or by ear, so that you're developing those innate musicianship skills before asking them to read. Because what we're really trying for is not a musical robot, a musical automaton that can sit down at the piano or with the flute or whatever it is that they're playing and press the button and get the note. We want the child to have the opportunity to develop those deeper musicianship skills of hearing, of seeing, of feeling and connecting with the music through movement and games, long before we rush them onto the instrument or we rush them into reading music notation. So the last pitfall I want to talk about is really at the root of these other two in many ways. I think that sometimes the reason we focus so heavily on the instrument, or we focus immediately on notation, not always, but often, I think it's rooted in fear. Several different fears, I think, can be at play here, and it's something that I've been pondering for a while, and we'll probably do some more work on some more videos and some more opportunities there. I think sometimes it's easier for us to focus on the thing that seems that we can do something about. And that's not just in music, that's in all kinds of things. I think about when I was preparing to be a mother, it was so much easier for me to obsess about the nursery decorations, perhaps, than it was to really fully contemplate the weight of the responsibility of my new role in life. And so it became easier to think about how many and what brand and what color the thread should be on the outside for their diapering than it was to think about, I am someone's mother and I need to think about what that means to me and how I'm going to pursue that. So I think sometimes we focus on the recorder or the instrument or the notation because there are other things that are intimidating to us. And the first fear I think that people have is the fear of singing. Honestly, so many of us, I mentioned before that singing is our first instrument, that it's truly the essence of who we are. And so many of us are walking wounded when it comes to our singing. People have said incredibly unkind and cutting words to people about their singing voice, whether that was a parent, siblings, other family members, perhaps it was a teacher of all people, that said something cruel and cutting. And we've addressed some of that in Music Unfolds and given some pointers for how to help you find your natural singing voice. But I do understand and I do sympathize because I mean I have all this training and some experience singing, and I still can remember just about every unkind remark that anybody has ever made about my voice. It's deeply personal. It could be deeply cutting and deeply damaging. I think we also sometimes, whether there's a fear of the singing, so we focus on the instrument or we focus on the notation. I think sometimes people are afraid of that instrument, and some of us, when we're afraid of something, into the breach we go, and so we're going to tackle that and we're going to conquer it and we're going to control it and we're going to fix it. And there's nothing wrong with that either, except when that becomes our sole focus and we miss out on those other things. We miss out on the singing, or we're so worried about getting the notation that we rush through the other steps along the path. And so I think that's a very real fear for people. I also think a very real fear that people have is the fear of failure, the fear of being inadequate, that, oh my gosh, how am I going to bring this to my kid or to my little class? I can't do this, so I'm not going to do it at all. Or I'm just going to focus on the things that I feel like I can control and that I can master. So all of those things are very legitimate fears, and you may be able to add others to the list. But fearing the singing, fearing the instrument, fearing just failing and wanting to fix and to master those things that we're frightened of. Everybody has their own response. So what do? Well, to overcome that pitfall of focusing on the instrument, you need to focus on the singing. And to overcome the pitfall of focusing on notation, I would suggest that you really wait on that. Our music curriculum, Music Unfolds, does that for you. It's all built in, and it helps you in those first couple of years to lay that great singing foundation and to help bring songs on the instrument in a timely and developmentally appropriate way. It helps you lay that foundation, and then it helps you step by step to finally bring that notation when Steiner believed it was appropriate. If you're not a Waldorf educator, I'm working on resources for you too. But those are the first things, is to just consciously realize that you're doing that and do something else. The fears are a little more tricky. We can't just make fears go away. I wish I had a magic wand. I know that aspects of my life would be vastly different. And for the people that I love and care about, I wish I could wave a little magic wand for you and make your fear of singing, or your fear of the instrument, or your fear of failure, or whatever your fear might be. I wish I could remove that for you. But I know in my own life, I really have not found it effective to try and remove a fear. Fears are very pernicious. They're a little bit like bamboo or any rhizomatous plant, in that they kind of take root and then they spread out and they grow and they creep, and you try and cut them down and they just keep coming back sometimes. So for me, what I have found is to perhaps just change my focus. Instead of focusing on that fear that's real and genuine and grounded in some real and memorable experience, is to change my focus. So I would suggest changing the focus perhaps from the end result, the prize, to the process. It's just like we do in art. I know I want my pictures to be beautiful, like I see these beautiful chalkboard drawings, but if I am only going to be satisfied when my drawing looks like that, I know for me personally, then I don't ever draw. So I have to focus on the process and what I'm learning through that process. And the same is true with music for our children. Instead of focusing on how poorly I think I might sing, or that I'm struggling with the instrument, I'm focusing on that process. That, hey, it's about what we're doing each time, each session that we get together and do this music. That it's about those moments and not about the end result. I get a lot of questions about how many songs should my child learn to play on their instrument in the first grade, and I usually give the rule of thumb about one per month of schooling. So if you school year round, you might do 12. If you don't, you might get 9 or 10. But the caveat is always this, that your child will tell you what they're ready for and what they can do. And I know in the first year of teaching, my own son, he did about 6 songs, and I was thrilled with that because he plays them beautifully and well and with such confidence. And in that process of learning those 6 songs, we learned so much. Which brings me to the other thing that you can focus on are those life lessons. So much we're focused on, is he playing the flute right? Is it just right? Is this just so? Am I holding this right? Are my fingers right? Focus on the life lessons that you are providing. I know in our lessons together, my son has learned many things. He's learned how do adults handle mistakes. I make mistakes, and he gets to see how mom handles that. How does mom handle frustration? How does mom handle it when no matter what she's doing in that moment, there's something isn't working right? So he gets to see handling mistakes, handling frustration, taking a break, coming back, persisting, asking for help. And those are such valuable life lessons that aren't learned any other way really well except by experiencing them and by observing and by modeling ourselves on someone who has shown us the way. So perhaps instead of focusing on that fear of failure, focus then instead on the life lessons that your child might be learning alongside you as you work through singing or playing or learning to teach music. I would also want to say that instead of focusing on mastery, perfection, and having everything just so, that we focus on a growth model. You know, that's also a life skill, because how many of us feel at the end of any day, I know as a mother, as an educator, there are just not that many days that I feel like I really knocked it out of the park, but I can feel each day that I made some progress toward my goals, and that's a life lesson. We can also focus, instead of focusing on the flute, instead of focusing on how many songs, how far have we gotten in the book, that we focus on the connections that we're making with our child. You know, if the music lesson is not joyful, if it's angry and frustrated and rushed and pushed, then we are really not forging a great connection with our child. And I know if you are working with your own children or with others, that's something that you've chosen to do, that we really want that to be a positive, meaningful experience. So think about that connection and think about that relationship instead of focusing on the fears that you might have, and think about how in the long run that connection that you've shared of learning music together and working through struggles together and spending that time together doing and making something of beauty, that is that connection that we all crave, and something that children desperately need in our world, where they learn so much from screens or from people outside the family, that sitting down with a caring adult, whether that's a parent or a teacher or a group leader, that connection with you is perhaps the most important thing of all. So as you're planning for your year, as you're contemplating how to bring music, be careful that you don't fall into the pitfalls of focusing so much on the instrument or so much on notation or so much on your fears that you miss the opportunity to teach some life lessons and to share and enjoy and foster that child's growth, and that you connect with them in a meaningful way. 50 years from now, it will not matter whether they were able to play hot cross buns on their flute or recorder in 2 easy lessons, but what they will remember and take with them is that connection that they shared with you. So thank you for joining me today. Please do visit my website at www.hearthandgnome.com, sign up for my mailing list, and check out my shop. Appreciate your time today. Thank you.